Hey folks, hope you're doing good today. Now, I must apologise for two things before we get going today. First of all, I'm sorry if you can hear my gardeners still using their power tools. I've been waiting for hours to do this show because they've been trimming the hedges and all the rest of it, mowing the lawns, but they're still going now, and if I don't get the video out soon, I'll have missed my slot. So apologies if you can hear a bunch of power tools in the background. And I just want to also apologise for looking terribly rough on all the videos for about the last week. I get a treatment at the hospital every 8 weeks, and that was today. And sometimes in the last week before that, I've started to feel rough as hell, which I did this time. And now I've had my treatment, I'm feeling a lot more perked up and better, so we're feeling a bit cooler. Also as well, I noticed on the videos, I've got a massive new wrinkle appeared here. Must have been smashing my face into the pillow sleeping over the weekend. Apparently give myself a new wrinkle. There you go, 40th birthday present. Today we've got a new band on the channel, but an old returning friend who makes this music. This is Nooses. We have this guy on the channel regularly, and he's one of the one-man bands that we've got really on board with. I am, at least, and love checking out his stuff, making some very, very cool music. And this is a project that he does all by himself, does all the recording, mixing and everything on his own for this one. And he's using this project as a way to get better at that stuff. Now, if you watched yesterday's video in the last track where I went on for about 15 minutes about one-man bands and all that stuff, I'll try not to repeat that again today. But again, this guy is doing what I was saying in that video, where he's learned that, you know, I can record my own stuff, and that means that I can just make whatever music I like. But there's a lot to learn. There is a learning curve with that stuff, and you've got to learn how to record yourself. You've got to learn how to mix yourself for that style of music as well. Now, he's chosen to go along with black metal for this stuff, because I will say you can't go wrong with black metal, because even a super raw, dirty mix with black metal fits the vibe. So, you know, it really doesn't matter how good or bad you are at doing mixing. You can pretty much mix yourself a black metal record in one shape or another. But he's using this to get better, and he wants his next album to sound a lot more better and higher quality. So very, very cool. I'm totally on board with that. So we're going to check out this project today. This project is called Empty. It's very dark, black metal, experimental, melancholic black metal. Sounds very cool though. So let's get into this. I've lined us up 2 tracks to check out so we get to know it a bit more. This is his latest one. It's called Why. It's got a lyric video. Here we go. Got the video up from the last one. come to join us. There you go. Very experimental, very different. Not actually what I was expecting from when I tuned in for just a few seconds to see what this one was all about. I thought it was going to be a bit more kind of standard fare than what we got there, because that was very different. Now, I will mention there are some things that can be improved about this, and he knows that there are, because he's using this project to try and improve and get better at this kind of stuff. So hopefully I can give him a couple of tips to get going and keep going down the right path with it. What I'm going to say is I'm pretty sure he only recorded one layer of guitar in this one. It was hard to make out because I think there was some reverb and stuff on there which did spread it out a bit, but I'm pretty sure there was only one layer of guitar. And really the standard, and it's hard to not use this format nowadays, and it's a shame because everyone uses it, but it's because it sounds very good. You want to double layer your guitars and you want to pan them out nice and wide because it just spreads the music across your ears, gives it a thickness, gives it a chunk, gives more power to the guitars, drives the riffs harder. So that's definitely something you really want to do for every single mix, is always record at least two layers of your guitar. And if you want it even thicker, you can record 4 layers of guitar, or even 6 or 8, depends how thick and chunky you want it to be. But that's one thing that I think this mix definitely lacked. And when a mix doesn't have that nowadays, because every mix does have it, your ears kind of go, hang on, this doesn't sound like typical music. And there are ways to create music without doing that, but for the most part, that is your meat and potatoes. You want to do that for every track. So I'd say on your next track, record at least 2 layers of guitar, spread them out, and that'll just add depth, width, and chunk to the whole mix in general from there on. Now, the drums were very experimental and different on this one, not typical black metal blasting drums or something like that. I really couldn't hear any snare usage at all in there, and I think really the drums at some point within the music need to have a groove and a beat that the listener can lock and get in with. Unless you're trying to create very out there and experimental music that's just very difficult to listen to and is weird rhythmically, it's nice for the listener to have some sections within there that they can bounce and get into. So I would have put a few bits in there, with more of a beat, just to create more of a groove in there. Can't go wrong with blast beats. If you're having trouble programming the drums, to get what you want out of them, I would say initially you can just use grooves. I even still use some grooves now. If I'm doing a long blast beat section and I don't need to just program a whole bunch of blast beats, I'll just use a blast beat groove that's already pre-programmed, because it's all the work's already been done for you, and it really doesn't make any difference because you could do all the work, but it's going to end up exactly the same at the end of the day anyway. So if you want a blast beat section, get some blast beat MIDI grooves, just paste them in, and it will set up the track for you nicely as a kind of foundation to get going with the music. The vocals sounded cool. I like the way they're buried in the mix, distorted, and, blackened and all in that way. So that was cool. But yeah, I think getting the guitars wider, getting a more of a chunk to the mix, and getting some beats and grooves in this one would have just been a bit nicer in my opinion, because it was the drums made it kind of super experimental because there were no grooves and beats in there really to lock into. So it always felt like it had a randomness to it, like it had a kind of, it didn't have any lock-in grooves to it, so you could never really bop along with the music, But we're going to check out another track as well of his that I wanted to check out, so we can get to know this music a bit more, because we've shown that, just listening to one track of bands nowadays really doesn't necessarily give you a good idea of what they're all about, because the next track could be totally different. The guy we had on yesterday, every single track that he made is totally different. If you listen to one, you've got no idea what he's about. So we're going to listen to Born Under the Rising of a Bleak Sun. Pretty cool name. Let's get it on the screen, give it a spin. This one's got a nice sound to it with the synths. Getting some clicks. There's some glitches in this one. I'm not sure if that's meant to be there or not. Now this one's nice. I enjoyed that a lot. This one's got the vibe. It's got a DSBM. I really like what he did with the vocal style, kind of backgroundy, aggressive, whispery type stuff. Yes, I think that was more of a success of a track than the newer one that we checked out today, purely because it had more layers and stuff going on in it. The synths in this one brought in extra width and depth that compensated for that lack of panned out guitars, which is one way I was going to say that you can do it, is bringing in synths, bringing in wide synth sounds, layering up synths to just create more depth and chunk in that way. And this one did have that nicely. This track had all the elements there nicely to make a great sound. What it needed and what you need to learn to do in the future for this kind of music, which is I had to learn for my kind of music because I had ran up against the same issues in my music. When you whack a bunch of reverb and atmospheric-y sounds together, what you do is you end up with quite a build-up around certain frequencies. And what you need to do is just make sure you've EQ'd all those different layers of synths and guitars and vocals and whatever else you'd add in there, so that those frequencies don't build up too much. And it's generally around the kind of 300 to 600 hertz area, the muddy area, that you get quite a lot of build-up, low-end reverby build-up that you need to dampen down. The way you do that is just really with EQ or dynamic EQ, so that as the sound builds up, it pushes it down in decibels and it just doesn't get too much in that area. And I could hear that build up in this track because my ears are tuned to it now, because I learned it with my music. I didn't notice it initially with my music. There's some of my first records that I put out for Micro Colossal have this issue as well. Too much low end or mid-low frequency build-up due to the amount of reverb on the synths and stuff, and not doing enough dampening on those mid-low frequencies. And it just causes too much of a build-up. When I listen to those tracks in my car, it almost blows my speakers. So yeah, I had to learn that myself. That's why I've got an ear for it. So just make sure going forward, if you're stacking a load of reverby, atmospheric-y sounds together, that you've paid attention to that mid-low area, the 300 to 600 hertz range, and just put a bit of a cut in there on each EQ pass for each synth or whatever you're using, and on the vocal as well, and it will take a bit of the guts away, but it will tighten it up, and it will mean that you don't get that low-end wallowy build-up that did happen in this track as well. Now I thought the drums were a bit cooler in this one. Although they were the same beat throughout, it created a kind of repetitious vibe within the music. I thought that was pretty cool, and I really like the vocal in this one as well, because it was aggressive and harsh, but also restrained and held back and whispery. Again, that's something I like to do in my music as well. Again, I think it just needed a couple of EQ passes on it. I would have taken a little bit off the high end. Some of the harsh frequencies were just a bit harsh in there, and it would have mellowed it out, and I'd have just pushed it a little bit more back into the mix, buried it behind the music and the synths to create an atmospheric vocal, because what I think always goes great in this kind of DSBM-y, vibey, dark, black metal stuff is, instead of having a lead vocal, you then use the vocal as like another synth sound. It's just another layer of music within the music, and bury it in there with some reverb, with the EQ passes and all the rest of it. So in the end of it, it's just another layer of sound, like another synth or the guitars or whatever. It's not its own standout lead vocal. And I think it was just a little bit loud in this one, to where it was still the lead. If it had just been pushed back a little bit more, it would have blended in with the rest of the music and the synths, just become weaved in with part of the sound, which I think is a nice way to do it with this kind of music. So I'm pleased with what this guy's doing. I'm really pleased, going off of what I said yesterday, that this guy, because this guy does usually use producers, he uses Alex, who's a very, very good producer, and I would say keep using Alex for the deathcore stuff, because he's nailing it with that stuff. He's doing a great job. But if you want to start a side project where you start out with some black metal or some raw music and get to learn how to do your own mixes and EQing and all the rest of it, and get an ear for the music and doing it yourself, man, I'm all for it. And you've got to start out somewhere. You know, you're not going to be the best coming out the gates, but the more you do, the more practice you put in, the more tracks you write and mix and master, the better you get. And that's exactly what his intentions are with this stuff. So totally on board with it. I think there are some things that he still needs to kind of get under his belt before he's starting to make really nice music, but he's heading down the right path, and I'm all for it that he's doing it as a way to willing to learn and get on board with the mixing and recording yourself scene. Sick, love that. So thanks very much for the submission. That's what I've got for you today. Some weird experimental kind of homegrown raw DSBM black metal. And next time we check him out, I'm pretty sure, you know, we'll have seen an improvement with his mixes, with his compositions, and we'll just be geeing him on even more, going, yeah, because I just love to see bands getting on, learning, and, you know, evolving with their stuff. Sick. So there you go. That's what I got for you today. We'll see you around, guys. Cheers. Bye.